Jesus wants us to announce to the whole world that we belong to him. Spirit of God coming down out of heaven in a voice from heaven where God said, "This is my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased." And everybody heard the voice. And when you get baptized and you go down in the water, but you are now the Son of the living God. Hey Elijah, how you doing?
Good, how about yourself?
Good. Got a question for me?
I do. For those people out there who don't know what baptism, what is it truly?
That's a good question. So I want to back you up a step, because baptism is something that we do after salvation. When we come to Jesus and what we call salvation, the Bible tells us to be saved and to be baptized. It's something we do right away. But a lot of people, like you say, don't really understand what all of that means. So I'm going to give it to you in a little bit different terms than most people might give it to you. Salvation is simply believing in Jesus Christ, right? We've come to the point where we're ready to dedicate our life to him, to give our life to him. There's a lot of different ways to say that. We believe in him, but believing means that we trust him, we're dedicating ourselves to him, we're living for him, all of the things that salvation means, right? But all of that is something that you do yourself. That's all between you and Jesus, right? This isn't something that's public. Nobody knows really what's going on in your heart. Nobody knows what's going on in your mind. This is very private. This is a conversation me and Jesus are having, right? And at some point, Jesus has talked to your heart, and you've said, "Okay, Jesus, I accept that offer of salvation. I believe in you. I trust you. And I want to put my faith in you." Now you're saved, right? It's an exciting moment in life, but nobody else knows. It's just you and Jesus. Now sometimes people will come forward in church, and some people will pray a prayer with the pastor and things like that, and that's all good and that's all fine, and there's nothing wrong with any of that, but it's still not public, right? So I relate it a little bit like marriage. When you and your future wife want to get married, for a number of months or years before you get married, there's something going on in your heart, right? You and this girl are talking with each other. You and this girl are making commitments to each other. You're telling her how much you love her, and she's telling you how much she loves you. But the rest of the world's not really involved in that, are they? It's just you and her. Mm-hmm. This is very private between you two. Family knows that you're in love with each other. Family kind of gets the hint that things are going on. Sometimes they'll give you advice and say, "Hey, you should marry that girl," right? Whatever. Or stay away from that girl. But it's between the two of you, and it's very private. And then you go to the girl and you say, I want to marry you, and you give her the ring or whatever it is in the tradition that you want to do. And she agrees. Now, what's the next step? Now you get married. Now you go before your friends and your family and your church, and you have this big church wedding. The pastor goes up there, and he makes this commitment that you've already made to your girl, right? You already worked that out between the two of you. Now you're making it very public. You want all your friends and family to celebrate with you, and you want everybody to know, right? Baptism is kind of the same thing. Baptism is saying, "Okay, Jesus, I've given you my life. We've made this love commitment between you and I. I've dedicated my life to you. Now I'm ready to go and make this public statement to the whole world." So baptism really, essentially, and the teaching is, and everybody in the church would agree, that when the baptism, the idea is you go down into the water and you're raised back up. And the idea is that we associate ourselves with Jesus. It's the way of saying, just like Jesus, who died and was buried in the ground, and then 3 days later he rose from the dead, because I want to be like Jesus, I want to marry him. I want to be part of him, right? So in order to visually associate with him, I'm going to show myself dying, being buried under the water, and being raised back to a new life that's dedicated with and to Jesus. The difference is between marriage And baptism is marriage is usually your friends, your family, the pastor, some church people, people you know, people you're close to, right? Those are the people you invite to your wedding. Baptism in the Bible is a very public thing. You never see baptism in the Bible at a synagogue. You never see Christian baptism or salvation type baptism that we're talking about in a temple or even in the modern or the early church. Or they didn't do that. Where'd they go? Mm-hmm. They went out to the river. They went out to the lake. They went out someplace where the whole world was watching. People from every nation could be driving down the road, walking down the road, whatever they did in those days. And they're seeing this crowd of people going down to the river. What are they doing? What's up? What's going on? And the person being baptized said, I've given my life to Jesus. I'm saved. I've committed myself to God. And I'm gonna show the world that by dying, going into the water, and being raised back up to life. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. That's what baptism is. It's more than public with your friends and family. It's public to the whole world. Because Jesus wants us to announce to the whole world that we belong to him. And we carry his name. Just like if you were to get married, the girl that you marry would carry your name, right? For the rest of your life. When we marry Jesus, we take his, figuratively, his name, his reputation, and we will carry that the rest of our life. And the whole world gets to see that. And the cool thing is, you get married to a girl, and you start living your life, you move in together, you buy a house, you do all the things you do in a marriage, and everybody's watching you. Everybody's giving you advice. Everybody's saying, hey, treat that girl right. Hey, don't be screwing around. Hey, don't be going over and hanging out with these friends. They're watching you, right? And they're keeping you somewhat accountable so you don't do something stupid to hurt your wife. This relationship. And they're doing the same thing to her because they don't want her to damage your reputation. And you don't want to damage her reputation, right? Because she carries your name. In the same way, when you marry Jesus, when you enter into this relationship and you symbolize yourself into this death, burial, and rising into a whole new life with him, the whole world now is watching. And they're watching you. And they want to know what this person who loves Jesus, what's he like? I saw him become like Jesus by dying and being buried and being raised again out of the water. I want to know what he's like. Isn't that cool?
It is, yes.
And so Jesus himself was baptized, and people also say, well, why was he baptized? He wasn't a sinner, right? And that wasn't the point. He was symbolizing himself as being, first of all, it's like obedience. He was told to be baptized, and so he was. But it's the whole idea that he was symbolizing himself as the Son of God. He was taking on, in that moment, he was taking on the fact that he is relating himself now to God. And the Bible tells us, this is really cool, that when Jesus went down in the water and rose back up, you could visibly see the Spirit of God coming down out of heaven in a voice from heaven where God said, this is my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased. And everybody heard the voice. Everybody. Can you imagine walking down the road with your kids and wondering what's going on in the river over here? And there's a voice from heaven. That would be cool. But everybody knew who this man was. This is my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased. And when you get baptized and you go down in the water, we probably won't hear a voice. That'd be cool. But you are now the Son of the living God. And you've just symbolized that in baptism. Is that cool?
It is very.
Good enough? All right. We'll talk to you later.
Talk to you later.